Beneath the veneer of skepticism, reality bears witness to chilling truths. In the haunting corridors of history, where shadows dance with undeniable evidence, remember this, the stories are true. Prepare for a revelation. Where the supernatural is stripped of fiction, and the unknown is laid bare. Are you ready to confront the undeniable? The stories are true.
Ahem. In the verdant fields of Bavaria, where the setting sun casts a golden glow upon the rolling hills and babbling brooks, there lay a farm, a place of simple living and honest toil, Hinterkaifeck. But on that fateful eve of the 31st of March, in the year of our Lord 1922, a pall of darkness descended upon this rustic abode, for a malevolent force had taken root within its very walls. 6 souls, bound by the sacred ties of family and the unbreakable bonds of service, were cruelly rent asunder by the savage blows of a pickaxe, wielded by a hand as merciless as the grave itself. Andreas and Casilia Gruber, the steadfast pillars of this humble homestead, their beloved daughter Victoria Gabriel, a widow in the prime of her life, and her cherished offspring, Casilia and Joseph, the very embodiment of innocence, all fell victim to this unspeakable act of violence. Even the faithful Maria Baumgartner, a newcomer to these environs, hired but that very morn, was not spared the murderer's wrath, her life snuffed out upon her humble pallet. But the malignancy that had taken root here knew no bounds, for even in the wake of this abhorrent carnage, the daily rituals of the farm persisted as though naught were amiss. The cattle were tended, victuals prepared, and the very hearth stoked, sending plumes of smoke skyward as a grim signaller of the unholy acts concealed within. So complete was the deception that even the humble mailman, on his appointed rounds, detected naught awry, the family's canine companion docilely awaiting his master's return. It was not until the following day that the terrible truth was laid bare, the broken and bloodied forms of this ill-fated clan discovered in a ghastly tableau within the very barn that had sheltered their labours. A scene so grotesque, so utterly at odds with the tranquil beauty of their surroundings, that it would forever scar the memories of those unfortunate few who bore witness. For Maria Baumgartner had been preceded by another, a maid who had fled in terror mere months before, driven away by the relentless patter of footsteps in the attic and the disembodied murmurs that seemed to issue from the very walls themselves. The Grubers, too, had not been spared these otherworldly visitations, for keys had gone astray. Strange newspapers appeared as if by sorcery, and the very tools of their trade bore the unmistakable marks of tampering. Andreas himself had borne witness to footprints, inhuman in their provenance, leading from the sheltering woods towards the threshold of their home, as though some malign spirit had been beckoned forth from the very bosom of nature itself. Though the arms of the law stretched forth, grasping at every whisper of evidence, every fleeting shadow of a clue, the truth remains obfuscated to this very day. The files, now yellowed with age and stained with the tears of the bereft, were at last closed in the year 1955, the house itself reduced to rubble, as though to exorcise the lingering miasma of evil that had so thoroughly permeated its timbers. Yet even now, the echoes of that fateful night seem to reverberate through the mists of time, a reminder that even in the most bucolic of settings, the depths of human depravity know no bounds, and that the veil between the realms of the living and the dead is forever gossamer thin.
Hold tight for the next one.
On September 7, 1996, the lights of the MGM Grand Casino in Las Vegas blazed with the fervor of a Mike Tyson boxing match. Among the crowd was Tupac Shakur, the well-known rapper whose life was a constant blend of talent and tumult. He stood beside Suge Knight, the imposing CEO of Death Row Records, watching Tyson's brutal efficiency in the ring. When the match ended, the scene shifted. In the lobby of the MGM, tension crackled. Tupac and his bodyguards clashed with Orlando Anderson, a Compton-based Southside Crips gang member. The fight was fierce but brief, quickly broken up.
After the fight, Tupac is still in that mode.
Hey. When Tyson get in the ring, he knocked motherfuckers out. Well, that's what Tupac gonna do.
He was still charged up.
Everybody that go to jail come out, they got good luck.
That's very addictive.
When niggas come against me, I'ma knock their punk ass out.
If he didn't have anybody to fight, he'll find somebody to fight. And then, Pac sees this guy.
The night continued its sinister course as Tupac and Knight left in Knight's car, an entourage of cars trailing behind them like shadows. At the intersection of Flamingo and Koval, the night turned deadly. A white Cadillac pulled up beside them, and gunfire erupted. Bullets shattered the night. Tupac was hit 4 times, a bullet fragment grazed Knight's head. In the chaos, life and death danced a violent waltz. Chris Carroll, a retired LVPD sergeant, later recounted being the first officer at the scene. He opened the car door and Tupac tumbled out, bloodied and broken. Carroll asked, "Who shot you?" With a deep breath, Tupac mustered only a defiant curse before slipping into unconsciousness. Rushed to UMC, Tupac was placed on life support, a medically induced coma, holding him in a fragile grasp. For 6 days, the world held its breath. On September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from his injuries, silencing a voice that had both inspired and enraged. He was 25. The investigation that followed was marked by shadows and silence. Las Vegas police made no arrests, and Yaki Gaddafi, a member of Tupac's entourage who claimed he could identify the shooter, was never interviewed. 2 months later, Gaddafi himself was murdered, and with him went potential answers. Years have passed, and the questions remain. The killer's identity is still a mystery, a phantom lurking in the memories of that night. No arrests have been made, and the truth of Tupac Shakur's final moments is locked away, a riddle unsolved in the desert heat of Las Vegas.
Hold tight for the next one.
In June 2014, Maria and Derek Broaddus, along with their 3 young children, prepared to move into their new home at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. They called it their dream home, just a couple of blocks from Maria's childhood residence, in one of the top 30 safest cities in the United States. 3 days after closing the sale, before the family had even moved in, a letter arrived in their new mailbox. It was addressed to the new owner in big, clunky handwriting. The typed letter read, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I'm in one, Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family contacted the previous owners, John and Andrea Woods. They stated that during their 23 years at 657 Boulevard, they had never received a letter like that, except for one a few days before they moved out. The Woods had never felt watched and rarely locked their doors at night. Though they found the note odd, they dismissed it. However, both families went to the police with the letter, and an investigation began. The police advised them to keep quiet about the letters, even from their neighbors, who were now suspects. 2 weeks later, the Broaddus family, still not moved in, received a second letter with even more chilling details about the family, including the children's birth order and nicknames. The watcher asked, "Will the children sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better." By the end of 2014, the case had stalled. There was no digital trail, no fingerprints, no way to place someone at the scene. The letters had taken a mental toll on the Broaddus family. 6 months after receiving the letters, they decided to sell the home. 657 Boulevard has been sold and is currently off the market, while the identity of the watcher remains a mystery.
Hold tight for the next one.
Alexis Patterson went missing from Milwaukee in 2002. She was 7 years old, dropped off at school by her stepfather, but she never made it inside. Speculation swirled around her mother and stepfather, with many believing they were involved. However, there was never enough evidence to arrest them. They both insisted on their innocence. The morning Alexis disappeared, she had argued with her mother, Ayanna Patterson, over cupcakes. Alexis wanted to bring the treats to school, but she hadn't completed her homework. As a result, her mother did not allow her to take the cupcakes. This small argument would become a haunting detail in the larger narrative of her disappearance. Laurent Bourgeois, Ayanna's husband and Alexis's stepfather, reported to the police that he and his son had walked Alexis to the corner between their home and the school. They left her with a crossing guard, who, according to records, was a 5th grader. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Alexis. The reports from that morning are conflicting. Some witnesses claimed they saw Alexis on the school grounds. Others insisted she never arrived. This discrepancy added to the confusion and mystery surrounding her disappearance. Each account only deepened the uncertainty and fear that gripped the community. 2 weeks after Alexis went missing, FBI behavioral analysts offered their conclusions. They believed Alexis was most likely the victim of an emotion-based homicide at the hands of her mother. Another possibility, though deemed less likely, was that she had been the victim of a neighbor. The analysts noted numerous discrepancies in the statements given by Patterson and Bourgeois to law enforcement, friends, and the media. With little physical evidence to support either theory, the case remains unresolved. Alexis's disappearance continues to haunt those who remember her, a tragic mystery that has yet to find a conclusion.
Hold tight for the next one.
The morning sun rose brilliant over Little Rock that fateful October day in 2015. Pretty 18-year-old Ebby Steppach made plans to meet friends, kissing her grandparents goodbye. She slid into her Volkswagen Passat and drove off, never to return alive. Her unsuspecting mother Laurie had been out to dinner with her husband that evening. Unbeknownst to them, Ebby had earlier texted her boyfriend Michael. She had been raped at a party by a group of men who filmed the assault. Trembling, she begged Michael to accompany her to the police. He agreed, driving Laurie home first before attempting to coordinate with the shaken girl. But Ebby fell ominously silent. For 24 harrowing hours, her family heard not a word. Then came a panic call to her brother Trevor around 5:30 p.m. the next day. Ebby was trapped, disoriented, locked inside her own vehicle, yet unable to relay her whereabouts. Those frantic words proved the last anyone would hear her voice. Police showed no urgency when Laurie reported her daughter missing that sleepless night. They dismissed it as a runaway case, ignoring the mother's pleas that something was terribly wrong. Days later, Ebby's abandoned Passat was discovered at Charlemont Park. Keys still inside, makeup catastrophically spilled, gas tank drained, but no trace of the teenage beauty. Half-hearted park searchers dragged on 3 years as incompetent investigators bungled the baffling case. Laurie endured a waking nightmare, fending off cruel ransom scams claiming to have kidnapped Ebby while her futile hope withered. Finally, in 2018, retired Detective Tommy Hudson re-examined the case with fresh determination. Instinct drew him back to the park's drainage pipes just yards from the abandoned vehicle. There, he found Ebby's decaying remains stuffed inside the narrow pipe, so achingly close, yet tragically overlooked. The anguished family wept that their Ebby had been mere steps away while police fumbled the search. Laurie raged that tiny miracles like finding her killer still glimmered, if only the original effort was thorough. To this day, the oppressive Arkansas humidity hangs thick with the mystery of what transpired that October day to leave a teenage beauty so cruelly desecrated. The stagnant case offers no answers, only the rancid smell of justice shamefully delayed.
Hold tight for the next one.
In 1976, the quiet town of Circleville, Ohio was shattered. Letters came, postmarked from Columbus, bearing no return address. They were venomous, filled with accusations and threats. The target was Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver and the school superintendent accused of an illicit affair. One letter reached Mary's husband, Ron. It told him to end the affair or die. The letters were relentless, each one more ominous than the last, casting a shadow over the town's tranquility. The tension escalated in 1977 when Ron died under mysterious circumstances. It was a one-car crash, but there were gunshots. The sheriff called it an accident, but doubts lingered. The wreckage of Ron's truck and the presence of a fired gun at the scene raised questions. People whispered about foul play, suspecting that the letter writer's threats had been realized. The sheriff's ruling did little to calm the growing unease. Fear took root in Circleville as the sinister presence of the anonymous writer loomed larger. As the investigation unfolded, suspicion turned to Paul Freshour, Ron's sister's husband. In a twist of fate, a booby-trapped pistol meant to kill Mary Gillespie was linked to him. Freshour was arrested and, despite his protest of innocence, was convicted of writing the letters and attempting murder. He was thrown behind bars, but the Circleville letters didn't stop. They continued to arrive, filled with the same vitriol and threats, terrorizing the residents throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s. Even Freshour himself received one in prison, further muddying the waters of his supposed guilt. The persistence of the letters during Freshour's imprisonment deepened the mystery. How could the letters continue if the alleged writer was incarcerated? The authorities had no answers, and the letters' sinister tone seemed to mock their efforts. Each new letter brought a fresh wave of dread, suggesting that the true writer was still at large, or that perhaps there was more than one person involved in this campaign of terror. The unanswered questions gnawed at the town, leaving a lingering sense of insecurity. In 1994, after serving a decade in prison, Paul Freshour was released. He maintained his innocence until his death in 2012, steadfastly claiming he had no part in the letters or the attempted murder. His release did little to dispel the cloud of suspicion that hung over him. For many, the mystery remained unsolved, and the true identity of the Circleville letter writer continued to elude discovery. Freshour's life, marked by accusations and imprisonment, ended with the truth still hidden in the shadows. To this day, the Circleville letters haunt the town. The fear they instilled and the questions they raised remain unresolved. Who was behind the letters? Was it one person or a conspiracy? The letters' legacy is one of dread and speculation, a dark chapter in Circleville's history that refuses to close. The identity of the Circleville letter writer remains a ghost, lurking in the memories of those who lived through the terror, a mystery that may never be solved.
Hold tight for the next one.
On the night before Christmas in 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, George and Jenny Sodder lay asleep with 9 of their children. The house was quiet, wrapped in the stillness that only comes before dawn. Around 1 a.m., the tranquility shattered as a fire erupted. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children escaped into the cold night. But Morris, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, remained trapped upstairs. George, frantic, broke back into the house, but the staircase was engulfed in flames. He raced outside to grab his ladder, but it was missing. Desperation drove him to his coal trucks, intending to use them as makeshift ladders, but neither would start. Marion, one of the children who had escaped, ran to a neighbor's house to call the fire department. The operator didn't answer. Another neighbor tried, but again no response. Finally, that neighbor drove to town and found Fire Chief F.J. Morris. The fire station was just 2.5 miles away, yet the firefighters didn't arrive until 8 a.m., 7 hours after the fire had begun. By then, the house was reduced to ashes. Authorities sifted through the smoldering remains, searching for traces of the 5 missing children. They found nothing. Chief Morris suggested the fire had been so intense it had cremated the bodies completely, including the bones. Yet this seemed improbable, for even in the fiercest blazes, bones usually remain. No one reported the smell of burning flesh either. The fire's cause was quickly attributed to faulty wiring, and death certificates were issued for the 5 children. But George and Jenny were not convinced. George had recently had the wiring checked by the power company, which had declared it safe. They began to suspect that their children had been kidnapped, the fire said, as a diversion. As the flames consumed their home, a woman claimed she saw the 5 children peering from a passing car. Another woman, staying at a Charleston hotel, saw the children's photos in the newspaper. She insisted she had seen 4 of them a week after the fire. The children were with 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian descent, she stated. I tried to speak to the children, but the men were hostile and wouldn't allow it. From the 1950s until Jenny Sodder's death in the late 1980s, the Sodder family maintained a billboard on State Route 16, displaying pictures of the 5 children and offering a reward for information. Sylvia Sodder, the last surviving child, never believed her siblings died in the fire. To this day, the fate of Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty remains an unsolved mystery.
Hold tight for the next one.
In the bucolic lanes of Devon, nestled in the southwestern corner of England, a haunting tale unfolds, steeped in sorrow and enigma. On a serene August day in 1978, a young girl named Genette Tate, scarcely 13 years of age, embarked upon her routine paper round, pedaling her bicycle with youthful vigor. Yet, a mere 7 minutes later, her friends stumbled upon a disconcerting sight. Genette's bicycle lay abandoned on the ground, newspapers scattered in disarray. Perplexed, the friends retrieved the bike and brought it to Genette's home, thinking perhaps she had wearied of her task. But Genette was nowhere to be found. Alarmed, her father, John Tate, reported her missing to the authorities. Thus began one of the most exhaustive searches of its era. Scores of police officers, search dogs, divers and volunteers scoured the countryside, yet no trace of Genette emerged. The case, shrouded in mystery, evolved into a murder investigation which remains unresolved to this day. John Tate, a man whose life was indelibly scarred by his daughter's disappearance, dedicated the remainder of his years to seeking answers. The Tate family resided in Aylesbury, near Exeter, at the time of Genette's vanishing. John, steadfast in his quest for truth, suspected that Robert Black, a notorious serial child killer, was responsible. Black, who had been convicted of murdering 4 young girls and was serving a life sentence, died in January 2016 before he could be formally charged in Genette's case. In the months following Black's death, the Devon and Cornwall police submitted a comprehensive murder file to the Crown Prosecution Service, seeking a conclusive statement on whether Black would have faced charges had he lived. However, the CPS declined to issue a decision, citing Black's demise as a limiting factor. In his twilight years, John's desperation for closure grew ever more poignant. "My life is coming to an end. I dearly want to know where Ginny is. Just to know that she has been found and given a Christian burial would be enough," he lamented. His health, already fragile from a major stroke, diabetes and prostate cancer, declined further, and he passed away in a Manchester hospital, never having received the solace he so ardently sought. Though the Genette Tate case remains unresolved, the relentless pursuit of truth by her family and the community stands as a poignant reminder of the enduring human spirit in the face of inexplicable loss.
Hold tight for the next one.
In the small coastal town of Yarmouth, a grim discovery shocked its inhabitants and stirred whispers of a malevolent presence lurking amidst the dunes. In the year of 1900, the body of a young woman was found, her life cruelly choked from her by a mohair bootlace. The town was in turmoil. Questions abounded and suspicion shadowed every corner. 12 years hence, in the fateful year of 1912, another woman met a similarly horrific end, close to the same desolate spot where the first tragedy had unfolded. Strangled with a shoelace in what seemed to be a grim reenactment of the earlier murder, this crime shook the town to its core once more. The chilling query on everyone's lips was unavoidable. How could the same killer be responsible for both deaths, when a man had already been executed for the first crime? The ill-fated couple at the center of the first tragedy, Herbert John Bennett and Mary Clark, had married under the shadow of scandal. At the tender age of 20, Mary had hastily wed the 17-year-old Herbert, driven by a youthful romance and an unplanned pregnancy. Their first child was stillborn, casting a pall over their nascent union, while their second was destined for orphanhood before the age of 4. The Bennetts engaged in a somewhat dubious enterprise, purchasing cheap violins and selling them as superior instruments to unsuspecting buyers. Herbert's ill-gotten gains funded a small grocery store, which mysteriously caught fire shortly after being insured, a fire from which the Bennetts reaped an acceptable profit despite the insurance payout falling short of their expectations. A mysterious trip to South Africa added to the intrigue surrounding the couple. Leaving their young daughter behind, they embarked on a long and arduous journey to Cape Town, only to return to London after a brief 4-day sojourn. The reason for this journey remained an enigma, further clouding their already troubled relationship. Upon their return, the couple's love had waned, replaced by bitter animosity. Their landlady recalled overhearing Mary threaten Herbert with imprisonment, while he, in turn, ominously wished her dead. In August 1900, Herbert whisked Alice away to Great Yarmouth, traveling in first class and staying at the Crown and Anchor. Herbert proposed, and Alice, under the illusion that Herbert was a man of means, accepted. Meanwhile, Mary, perhaps aware of her husband's seaside escapades, decided to take her own autumnal break in Yarmouth, traveling under the pseudonym Mrs. Mary's sojourn in Yarmouth was shrouded in secrecy. Staying at a boarding house under the pretense of being a recent widow, meeting her brother-in-law, she went out almost every evening, her activities cloaked in mystery. Back in London, Herbert fabricated a story about attending to his dying grandfather in Gravesend. But on September 21st, the Rudrum's daughter overheard Mary conversing with a man whose words hinted at a predicament. Could this man have been Herbert, or was Mary involved with another? The next night, September 22nd, saw Mary donning her finest jewelry and carrying a substantial sum of money. She was last seen in a pub with a man identified by the owner as her estranged husband. That night, her cries for mercy were heard on the beach by Alfred Mason and his girlfriend, Blanche Smith. Unsettled, they left quickly, later realizing they had witnessed the last moments of Mary's life. It took over a month for the authorities to connect the dots. A laundry mark on Mary's clothing led to her identification, and Herbert's duplicity began to unravel. A Scotland Yard inspector discovered enough evidence to arrest him, including the incriminating long chain found among his possessions. Herbert's subsequent trial revealed his deceitful life and suspicious actions surrounding Mary's death. Despite a fervent defense by barrister Edward Marshall Hall, who cast doubt on the chain and produced a questionable alibi, the evidence against Herbert was overwhelming. Alice Meadows' testimony exposed Herbert's fabrications, and he was found guilty, maintaining his innocence until his last breath. Herbert was hanged on March 21, 1901 at Norwich Jail, with his final words being, "I say I am not guilty, sir." His execution was marked by ominous signs, including a snapped flagpole, which some took as a symbol of his innocence. Herbert's body was buried in the prison grounds, now the site of Norwich's Roman Catholic Cathedral. His defense counsel, Marshall Hall, continued to believe in Herbert's innocence, tirelessly seeking a reprieve but to no avail. Mary was laid to rest in Yarmouth's northern cemetery, her grave marked by a coffin-shaped stone. The eerie similarities of Dora May Gray's murder in 1912 to Mary's death reignited fears of a serial killer. Dora, an 18-year-old domestic servant, was found strangled with a shoelace and stockings tied in reef knots. her body left in the dunes near Mary's final resting place. Dora's life was also scrutinized, revealing a lively young woman with a penchant for yachting men, much to the disapproval of the Edwardian Society. Despite exhaustive investigations, including questioning numerous suspects and dismissing several false confessions, Dora's murderer was never found. Theories abounded, including a possible connection to the yachtsman Dora favored, but nothing conclusive emerged. In 1965, Paul Capon's book posited that Herbert Bennett was innocent, suggesting instead that Mary's killer was a sailor she had met in South Africa and one of Dora's yachting acquaintances. This theory, though compelling, was considered unlikely by other researchers who believed Dora's death was a tragic coincidence, inspired by the first murder rather than the work of a serial killer. The truth remains elusive, shrouded in the mists of time and the secrets buried with those who knew it. Whether a miscarriage of justice, a chilling coincidence, or the work of a copycat killer, Yarmouth's dark mystery endures, leaving us to ponder the true nature of the horrors that once stalked its sands.
Hold tight for the next one.
It was just a routine practice bombing operation. Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, boasting over 2,500 flying hours, led his trainees on Flight 19, experienced pilots all. The 5 planes and 14 crew members leaving Florida expected to return in a few hours. That was December 5th, 1945. We are still waiting for them. The practice run was safely completed. The last bomb dropped at 3 p.m. But at 3:45, when the planes should have been nearing the airfield, trouble began. Fort Lauderdale's flight tower received a message from Taylor, who sounded confused and worried. "Cannot see land," he said. "We seem to be off course." The tower asked for their location. "We cannot be sure where we are," the flight leader announced. "Repeat, cannot see land." There was silence for 10 minutes. Then another message, not from Taylor. "We can't find west. Everything is wrong. We can't be sure of any direction. Everything looks strange, even the ocean." 20 minutes later, a hysterical voice said, "We can't tell where we are. Everything is, can't make out anything. We think we may be about 225 miles northeast of base." Mumbling followed. Then the final words flight control ever received from Flight 19. "It looks like we are entering white water. We're completely lost." 2 PBM Mariner flying boats carrying 13 men and rescue equipment were dispatched to Flight 19's last estimated position. 10 minutes later, they sent a message relaying their position. They were never heard from again. In a few hours, 7 search planes and 27 men had disappeared into thin air. For 5 days, searches scoured the 250,000 square miles formed by the triangle of Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. None of the aircraft were found, and the U.S. Air Force report stated simply, "Cause unknown." Thus was born the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. Numerous ships had previously vanished in the area, but there was always a rational explanation. To lose so many aircraft and so many men in one go was unprecedented. More losses followed. In 1948 and 1949, the Star Tiger and Star Ariel disappeared between Jamaica and Bermuda, taking over 50 souls. Then a Douglas DC-3 went down with 32 passengers. In 1963, 2 KC-135 stratotankers collided, yet some claim 2 sets of debris were found 160 miles apart, and another half-dozen small planes have come down there since. No other region on Earth has seen so many mysterious fatalities. Natural explanations abound. Magnetic variations affecting compasses, hurricane activity, violent weather, even undersea bubbles dragging planes and ships down. But none account for the frequency or the peculiar nature of these disappearances. Did the pilots of Flight 19 experience something beyond science's reach? Some propose the Bermuda Triangle is a parallel universe causing warps in time and space that suck victims in. Others suggest it's a hotspot of extraterrestrial activity. There is one other possibility. In 1968, 3 divers off the coast of Bimini Island discovered rock formations resembling man-made walls and pavements. Could it be that here, lurking in the depths near where Flight 19 vanished, lies the lost city of Atlantis? Could it be causing disturbances, or could it be repopulating?
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the unexplained. We hope these mysteries have sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to delve deeper into the unknown. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop seeking the truth.